really happy with the results.
And in hole 4, we kind of drilled into the thicker part of it, and we have 64 meters at 3 grams per ton. And the first meter of that intercept rated 145.4 grams per ton.
We're obviously sitting on something that might be very well mineralized.
And so if you get such an intense structures that cut through the results, that shows a very strong system for gold.
For the next couple of months, drill results.
All right, today we're having a chat with Oscar Louzada, CEO, Rayiez Bhoelan, VP of Exploration, and Dennis LaPoint, Executive VP of Exploration and Corporate Development. Oscar, first a word to you. You have found some incredible results during your maiden drilling campaign, and hole number 4 seems to be the big hole.
Yeah, morning, Stein, or afternoon, Stein. Yeah, absolutely. Really happy with the results that came back from the lab. We're obviously sitting on something that might be very well mineralized. And the initial 4 holes have been published, as you can see, well mineralized. Lots of structure, lots of interesting things, but I'll let the guys talk regarding the technical aspects of the holes.
Definitely. And before we transition to Rayiez and Dennis for a second, every hole that you've drilled this far in this release seems to have hit mineralization.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Really happy.
Yeah, really exciting. It's definitely not the standard for an exploration company of your stage. Hey, Rayiez, perhaps we can switch to you for a second. It seems that you guys have been able to interpret the data a bit already in this figure that we're seeing right now. Quite interesting, and like we outlined, every hole hit mineralization.
Yes, Stein. So right now we're looking at a section which is looking north, where we're looking perpendicular to hole 3 and 4. Hole 2 and 1 were at a different angle, but what we are seeing is a really strongly shared ore zone hosted within the basalts, with really strong silica and sericite alteration. And the extent of tectonic damage is such that we as geologists classify it as a myelinite, which is a metamorphic rock. But we see multiple zones of this in the core, and from one hole to the other. As you see, the interpretation here in the already deformed basalts, that we have what we call the hanging wall, which is to the west. We have the thicker intercepts, but there's also in the footwall there's some smaller zones that we will follow up on with additional holes.
Yeah, really interesting to see this interpretation where you have multiple of these zones. Of course, the Saprolite refers to this brown band that we're seeing, a bit more weathered rock closer to the surface. The basalt, less weathered, deeper rock. And you have these multiple shear zones that you're finding really good mineralization in.
Yes. So the Saprolite is basically the basalt, but it's weathered in situ, which means it's in the same place. So it's just we have a nice 40 to 50 meter thick oxidized zone there, and this section illustrates that very well. I don't know if Dr. LaPoint wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, just follow up what Rayiez says. First of all, the weathering profile reflects the underlying bedrock, and so what we see in the saprolite, which is just weathered bedrock, continues on into the fresh rock. But there's 2 things. One is that at the Randy pit we get a fairly thick zone of saprolite, which is actually quite good for mine development because it's the gold is more free. It's much easier to process. You don't need to crush it so much. And so at both Roosevelt and Marion, the saprolite is a very important contribution to the ore. The other thing is, as Rayiez pointed out, the basalts are a good host rock. They're quite competent, and they behave more brittly. And so if you get such an intense structures that cut through the results, that shows a very strong system for gold. And we see multiple episodes of movement and shearing, and so it's a very strong, let's call it a very strong gold system. So I think we're onto something here. Each hole will show different aspects. We're going to learn a lot more. We're going to learn about the extension, and I want to point out on this figure that just because the red is cut off doesn't mean the gold's cut off. It's just we don't have any data down there.
Well understood. It definitely could run much deeper. You just don't know yet, of course. Rayiez, I would love to run through the results for a second. Of course, we went head first into interpreting them. Perhaps you can run us through really what are the results thus far and how are the grades looking like?
So Stan, as you can remember, we had a first release in September with hole 1 where we had 11.5 meters at 3.6 in the Saprolite. Hole 2 was a 80 meter step down at depth on that same section. And we have another intercept at a similar magnitude, 13.5 at 1.8. Hole 3 and 4, hole 3 basically tried to pierce the structure in between where you intersected with hole 1 and 2. And in hole 4, we kind of drilled into the thicker part of it. And we have 64 meters at 3 grams per ton. And internally, we have inside that zone, we have 17 meters at 10.5 grams per ton, which includes 5 meters at 33.5. And the first meter of that intercept from 167 to 168 meters rated 145.4 grams per ton. And in this zone, we had observed during the logging some visible gold, which was free gold flakes and fractures, and in the shear plane within this really gray to white smoky vein that is hosted inside this shear zone, this myelinite zone. Another good thing about hole 4 is that we have had a second zone, which is 15 meters at 1.2 grams per ton, which is the one I was referring to earlier, sitting in the hanging wall. So that's just an extra excitement for us, and will actually change some of our drilling soon. Yeah, really positive start.
Definitely, those are some incredibly exciting holes, and of course, big holes. Hole 4 is the big one with 180 gram meters, as you outlined there, 64 meters at 3 grams a ton. However, even hole 2 and hole 3 would be could potentially be headline holes for a different exploration company.
Yeah, I think they could be, but I think we're on the pathway to some really good results, not only with hole 4 but beyond. So we should continue to come out with news releases after batches of holes here, and I think we'll have more very positive results. And I want to address that what Rayiez said about the gold, that it's actually quite interesting. It's very fine gold, relative fine gold, but it's very abundant. It's not just a single grain or something like that. So I think that's perfect. That's great.
Yeah, in a potential mining scenario, of course, it would also be very easy to process.
Right, with gravity, right.
Yeah, no, definitely. And talking about this exploration method that you guys have developed thus far, of course, you have the trenching that you're doing on site, sampling from the artisanal miners, and now you are starting to be able to interpret this data. Rayiez, how does that help you find mineralization in the future?
So the mapping in the saprolite is really important, Stan, because saprolite is weathered rock in that stays in the same place basically, and the structural data that you can get from mapping those meticulously has shown or demonstrated in these first holes how important that is, because it is the information from the saprolite mapping that we've used to kind of reorient the drill direction to get these intercepts. And right now, the trenches that you refer to, they're about 400, 500 meters away from these drill intercepts. So it gives us a broader zone than just the Randy's pit to investigate with drilling. And then we also, from these intercepts, we have the area going north. So, in the immediate future, we're looking at an 800 meter zone that needs to be investigated by drilling and trenching and mapping. And it continuously goes on. And we've seen how important it is to understand the structure to try and place your drill in the best possible orientation.
And how does the future look like drilling-wise? Of course, you've now released the first 4 holes. Where are we currently at with the holes, and how many holes should we expect here at Randy's Pit during this campaign?
Well, we're making great progress. The drilling is going very smoothly, and we're going anywhere from 150 to 200 meters deep. We're using a very systematic approach that we learned from the previous holes, and we haven't even started drilling underneath the Randy Pit yet. We're still to the north of it, so we have a number of holes. Like Rayiez says, we're we're constantly reviewing the results and adjusting the program. And we're actually very fortunate to have a feed lab here in Suriname, which is the same lab used by Founders and I think by Miata, but actually by Newmont and Jijin. They're a great lab and they give us great turnaround, and so we can adjust our program as we get results. So we have a great team logging, trying to keep up with the drilling and getting the samples out quickly, and so we'll just keep drilling.
That sounds like a good future, and of course what's exciting, especially to me as an investor in Sranan Gold, is we've thus far been talking about, of course, Randy's pit, which is already a couple 100-meter long trend. You also have, of course, the target at Phuket that you hopefully will start working on in the immediate future, and there is a potential that these two actually might connect.
Yeah, of course, and they're on the same structure. The structure is fairly wide, and we will move over to Phuket with another rig, most likely since it's November, sometime after the first of the year.
I'd like to add something, Stain. As we speak, we've already drilled 2,000 meters, and we can easily get to 5. When I look at the strike length at Randy's that's opened by Randy's pit, the trenching and ongoing work. So almost half of the footage that we had planned upon, we can foresee that's going to be allocated to the Randy's pit. The Phuket target is another kilometer long at surface from mining and mapping. So next year, the rest of the footage will be allocated to Phuket. But then what I wanted to note too is that we keep referring to the 4.5 kilometer long Phuket Randy trend on north and south side of the Tapanahoni River. But even in the extensions of Phuket and Randy's, there is a lot of potential, but there will need to be some field work and some earlier stage methods used to develop those targets going forward. So we have much in the pipeline.
Well understood. The first really good results, of course, in a potentially district scale deposit that we might be talking about. And perhaps, Oscar, the word to you for a second. Perhaps you can outline what type of catalyst potential investors should be looking out for.
For the next couple of months, drill results. We're going to be busy at Randy for quite some months. Obviously, as Dennis previously mentioned, we're going to start at Phuket on the other side of the river in towards the end of the year, New Year, beginning of the year. Lots of drill results.
That is definitely an exciting future. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the update today. Very excited to go to Suriname next week to take a look behind the scenes. And we'll share that, of course, with everyone watching this video as well.
Perfect. I'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stan.